I am making this video to let the British public know the crimes against humanity that their government and the people that control Britain have been perpetrating against my people. I'm making this video so that you can all hear for yourselves the part Britain has played in the crime against humanity that is Nigeria. In creating the country Nigeria. Nigeria is a crime scene, an ongoing crime scene. I'm making this video for the British public to know that I'm not just making spurious accusations. And also, I'm making this video for the so-called one Nigerians, so that you can see for yourself how your one Nigeria was created for you. You will hear for yourself the schemes, the agendas behind the British creation of one Nigeria. This video I'll play it as an audio, but the very first thing that it says on the thumbnail is this: the worst form of independence ever attained on this planet Earth. The Nigeria independence from Britain. Please listen to this. Right, let's listen. And this is for the saboteurs, the warrant chiefs.
A system of fair and honest democracy before granting the country independence in 1960. Look, we are not kids. We are mature people. So,
Britain is claiming that they'll give us free and fair democracy before granting us independence. Right.
Country independence in 1960.
Look, we are not kids. We are mature people, and the country is mature. We are giants of Africa.
But according
to... Hey, one Nigerians is not today. Is not today. Britain has been programming one Nigeria into us long before independence. And when they thought it was right, then they allowed independence. So, you see, you heard that guy, we're giant of Africa. They've been shouting giant of Africa since 1960. Look at Nigeria today. The joke of Africa, the ant of Africa. Let's continue.
And the country is mature. We are giant of Africa.
But according to our document, the unpublished memoirs of a former British colonial officer, London's parting gift was, in reality, a lesson in how to rig the polls and deceive the people.
This is the story.
Sorry, did you hear that? Did you all hear that? London's parting gift to Nigeria was a lesson in how to rig the polls. London's parting gift to Nigeria was a lesson in how to rig the polls. And then today, when you see elections like the one Yaya Bello did in Kogi State, that had to be described as Yaya Bello didn't win an election, he won a war. You see who taught you. Britain, you see what you taught my people. You see what British government instituted in that contraption, in that glorified slave camp. Let's continue. Or in fact, let's hear that again.
We are not kids. We are mature people, and the country is mature. We are giants of Africa.
But According to our document, the unpublished memoirs of a former British colonial officer, London's parting gift was, in reality, a lesson in how to rig the polls and deceive the people.
This is the story.
Deceive the people. Rig the polls and deceive the people. Have they stopped deceiving you? Didn't Buhari deceive you? Change. Everybody, you guys even stop to ask, wait. This change you're shouting, what kind of change? Nobody, everybody, just had change. I'm sure some people even thought it was change, as in money. Change. See how they are deceived? They've been deceiving you for 60 years. Let's continue.
The people.
This is the story of evil committed by kind, nice, decent British politicians. They sought to keep Britain from bankruptcy and
This is a story of evil committed by kind, nice, decent people. The agenda was to keep Britain from bankruptcy. You were never given independence. Listen, just listen. You hear everything.
found a solution in the mineral-rich empire on the point of independence. It was necessary to bend the rules, and sadly, in due course, the rules were...
Did you hear? To stop Britain from going bankruptcy, they had to look to depend on their mineral-rich sources from the empire. And it was necessary to bend the rules. Okay. This is Britain bending rules, oh. This is Britain bending rules, oh, not the so-called Nigerians. Okay. Bending rules just to maintain control.
In 1956, Nigerian children sang to welcome the Queen as she toured some of their country's new democratic institutions.
Sang to welcome the Queen. Oh yeah, okay, yeah, thank you for giving us freedom. So we thought. So we thought. Nigerian children singing to welcome the Queen. Thinking that we were free. Well, look at us today. They are killing us like chickens. Okay, let's continue.
And in January 1960, on his way to South Africa to make his famous speech, warning that a wind of change was blowing through the continent, the British Prime Minister, Harold Macmillan, stopped off in Lagos to give the Nigerian Parliament some pearls of wisdom from the world's longest-standing democracy.
So long as we value the freedom of speech, freedom to express our opinions, I know of no better system than a fairly elected parliament for giving people the sort of government they want.
Those who got in the way...
You're telling us about fair parliament, but you were in the background rigging everything.
For giving people the sort of government they want.
Those who got in the way were innocent, like the colonial peoples, but both had to be dealt with quite harshly.
Back in the night.
And you were willing to deal quite harshly with anybody who got in the way. Okay.
But both had to be dealt with quite harshly.
Back in the 1950s, Harold Smith, an idealistic young Oxford graduate, was settling into life as a British colonial official in the Nigerian capital Lagos with his wife Carol and their young daughter.
Now, this Harold Smith is a true humanitarian, a true human. I have so much love and so much regard and so much respect for him. So this is not about blind hate for Britain. This is just about hatred for what you are doing to me and my people. What you're doing to me and my people is now bordering on pure genocide.
A British colonial official in the Nigerian capital Lagos with his wife Carol and their young daughter. Important regional elections were to be held that year, followed by a national poll 3 years later, just ahead of independence. Harold had his part to play in the preparations, drawing up new laws aimed at ensuring that Britain left Nigeria an orderly and stable place. But his...
So you send Harold Wilson, one of my heroes, you send Harold Wilson to Nigeria to help draw up laws and stuff for Nigeria's elections and, getting in so-called independence. And Harold Wilson is a good man. He went there thinking he was going to do a good job. But little did he know. I mean, he worked for the British government, so I guess when you work for someone, you have to do as you're told. Okay, let's continue.
Place, but his faith in the integrity of the project was soon to be shattered.
In 1956, I was in Lagos on the staff of the Ministry of Labour when I received the secret file, which had a minute.
Secret file?
To get involved in the regional elections which were taking place. It told me to take all the vehicles of the Ministry of Labour, all the staff, the clerical staff, and as many senior staff as I could find, to act on behalf of the minister. And the chap was called Festus Okoti Minute, which ordered me...
So he was in his office in Lagos when he got secret memo, to take all the vehicles and all the staff from the British, embassy, consulate, commission, whatever, to go and support one of the election candidates, a certain Okoti Igbo, one of the people that invented corruption in Nigeria, one of the warrant chiefs, one of the original warrant chiefs in Nigeria. Let's continue.
To get involved in the regional elections which were taking place, it told me...
To get involved in the regional elections that were taking place, they told him to continue.
Take all the vehicles of the Ministry of Labour, all the staff, the clerical staff, and as many senior staff as I could find, to act on behalf of the minister. And the chap was called Festus Okoti Igbo, and carry out the ministers, the appointing ministers' instructions, and get his party colleagues elected.
Festus was a flamboyant political figure who'd been appointed Minister of Labour. He was also treasurer of one of Nigeria's main political parties, the NCNC, which had its power base in the east. Harold Smith says he was shocked to be asked to interfere in the election on behalf of the NCNC candidates, standing for seats in the minister's constituency.
To have cars and trucks in the bush at all gave you tremendous prestige. All people had were bikes. If a fleet of vehicles with maybe 30 or 40 staff of clerks and administrators had suddenly descended, they'd have made a very big impact as this was official, this was government.
Did you hear that? So, Britain is now, before the election, asking British officials working in Nigeria to go and help Festus Okoti Igbo of the NCNC to take all the staff, all the vehicles, and he's saying it now that what they were trying to portray was, obviously, when people see all the British staff, all the British clerks and their vehicles supporting one party, it kind of gave an air or a suggestion of that was official. So they were already trying to control people's minds before the election.
It made a very big impact. This was official, this was government stuff.
Mm-hmm. Government
Why
business.
did the British want you to help ensure that this man, or at least his colleagues, were elected?
Because the plan was to put the North in government, in power.
Did you hear that? They asked him, so why did the British want you to help this man get elected? Harold Wilson said, because the British wanted the North in power. Are you hearing? Are you hearing?
People had the bikes. If a fleet of vehicles with maybe 30 or 40 staff of clerks and administrators had suddenly descended, they'd have made a very big impact. This was official, this was government stuff.
Why did the British want you to help ensure that this man, or at least his colleagues, were elected?
Because the plan was to put the North in government, in power. The elections were just to be fixed.
A very serious...
Are you hearing? The plan was to put the North in power. The election was to be fixed. This is Britain fixing election in Nigeria. Rigging election in Nigeria. And David Cameron will come and be saying Nigeria is fantastically corrupt. Who taught us corruption? Were we not Republicans before you came to our land? 300 to 250 years ago. Were we not Republicans? Did we know anything like corruption? You brought your capitalism with all its corruption. And now you're telling us we're fantastically corrupt. Meanwhile, you taught us.
Accusation that Britain, which advertised its withdrawal from empire as a model of fairness and democracy, was allegedly rigging, or at the very least, giving advantage to a favoured party in the polls.
Mm-hmm. Did you hear that? Britain was going around advertising herself as a model of ending colonialism. But meanwhile, was going around in the background rigging elections. Hi, Britain.
In power. The elections were just to be fixed.
A very serious accusation that Britain, which advertised its withdrawal from empire as a model of fairness and democracy, was allegedly rigging, or at the very least, giving advantage to a favoured party in the polls.
Mm-hmm.
Can such an allegation be substantiated? I took Mr. Smith's claims to the director of the Centre of African Studies at Oxford University, Professor David Anderson.
In the 1950s, virtually all the British colonies were moving towards independence in Africa, and there were elections taking place everywhere. It would not be unfair to say that in almost every single colony, the British attempted to manipulate the result to their advantage.
In almost every single colony, as the British were claiming they were decolonizing, they were in the background manipulating all the elections, rigging everything to their advantage. So, why is it such a surprise that Kenya, who is where they illegally kidnapped Mazen Nnamdi Kanu? Is Kenya not a British colony? Is anyone seriously trying to tell me that MI6 agents are not operating all over Africa, Nigeria, Kenya, all those places? Come on. MI5, MI6 has been in Nigeria from day one, from amalgamation. They were there. Maybe not in form of MI6, but they were then maybe in form of SOE, Special Operations Executive. But the British Secret Service has been in the background pulling the strings of ongoings in that zoo, Nigeria, from day one. Because of money.
Indeed, it would be surprising if, as the colonial power, they'd not done so.
At this time, Nigeria was divided into 3 regions, each with distinct and often conflicting tribal and cultural identities.
They knew Nigeria was divided into 3 regions, each distinct, with conflicting and often rival identities. They knew. But yet, they trapped all of us together. And as they trapped all of us together, they are trying to rig some people. They are trying to give power to some people. Why?
And cultural identities. Partition was a very real threat, and given their experiences in India, something the British were determined to avoid. Traditional.
Did you hear that? Did you hear that? Partition was a very real threat, and given their experience in India, something the British were very keen to avoid. Oh, so Britain knew that they could have just partitioned us. Okay, north, go. Southwest, go. Southeast, go. But they were very keen to avoid this in Nigeria. Why?
To avoid. Traditionally, the colonial power had enjoyed a close relationship with the largely Islamic north of Nigeria.
Have you heard? Traditionally, the British have always enjoyed a close relationship with the largely Islamic northern part of Nigeria. I'll rewind it for you to hear. Traditionally. That traditionally means that Britain and the Fulani have been business partners for a long time before independence, for a long time before amalgamation. Britain and Fulani were gang members that conducted the slave trade. For 250 years, Fulani and Britain conspired to be kidnapping us and selling us into slavery. Fulani would do the slave raiding. Britain would now go and do the slave trading. Buy tobacco, sugarcane, sell us in America. Buy tobacco, sugarcane, carry back to Britain, make money, collect more guns and nonsense that whatever Fulani wants, bring back to them. Put order for slaves. Obviously, Fulani, most of what they bought was weapons, anything to kill. Fulani will now start mounting slave raids all over the place. This is how Britain and Fulani were working. So, little wonder they always favored the North because they were business partners. Bound together not just by agreement, but by pact. Hey, Britain. I used to have a lot of respect for Britain, man. Because when I was growing up, I used to read Great Britain, and I thought they were the best, most civilized people on the planet. But the more I analyze the history, there's not much difference between British behavior and Fulani behavior. So I'm beginning to question, maybe they're the same people. Anyway, let's continue.
This part of the country was more conservative and less developed than the rest. Here, the British operated a system of indirect rule, governing through the local emirs. Professor David Anderson.
The north of Nigeria was not only largely Islamic, it was deeply conservative. And therefore, it was ideologically going to oppose the Pan-Africanism and internationalism that tended to mark southern politics in Nigeria.
Did you hear that? Inugo? North was largely conservative, and naturally they were going to oppose the Pan-Africanism or Pan-Africanist politics of the South. And these are the people Britain gave power. So why do you think you're still being held down today? They've been holding you down since independence. Before then, they were the ones kidnapping you for slavery. In fact, let me even pull it back a bit more.
This part of the country was more conservative and less developed than the rest. Here, the British operated a system of indirect rule, governing through the local emirs. Professor David Anderson.
The north of Nigeria was not only largely Islamic, it was deeply conservative. And therefore, it was ideologically going to oppose the Pan-Africanism and internationalism that tended to mark southern politics in Nigeria. So for sure, the British saw the north as an important bulwark against what they might have termed unnecessary radicalism.
Did you hear that? So naturally, the British saw the north as people to work with, to suppress what they saw in the southerners as unnecessary radicalism. In the zoo, are you hearing?
Fear of radical political ideas, in other words, communism, was key to British policy in Africa in the 1950s.
Communism was thought of as a very serious threat in West Africa because the kind of socialism it fed upon in Africa was driven by massive poverty and very low levels of education.
Did you hear that? So, as Britain was leaving, they were afraid that when they leave us, communism will come in and take over. Communism. Listen very carefully. Communism. Britain was afraid that when they go, communism will come in and take over because of the kind of poverty and lack of education they were leaving us in. After mining our resources, after enslaving us for free labor for hundreds of years, they were still leaving us in poverty. And then they were now worried that communism will come and take over. This same communism that they were worried that will come and take over, this is the same communism that during the Biafran War, at the height of the Cold War itself, somehow Britain found a way of working with the communists in Russia to supply weapons to Nigeria to suppress Biafra. So basically, when it comes to black people, Britain will dine with even the people she calls the devil. So that means in Britain's eye, we must be worse than the devil. Because during the Cold War, they made everybody believe the world was going to end. Russia will nuke everybody. But little Biafra said, look, we want freedom. Britain, Britain said no. Went to go and team up with their arch enemy, Russia. Just because of Biafra, Just because of Biafra, I suspend their Cold War. Sorry. Sorry. So, just because of Biafra, Britain suspended the Cold War with Russia and ganged up with them to crush Biafra. People need to understand Britain wants us gone from the face of this earth. We're a big stumbling block to her ambitions. But it's not our fault. Because we never did anything to Britain. Britain, what did we do to you? It's not us that left our land and came to your own 400 years ago. It's you that came. And since you came, you've just been disturbing us. We've not known any peace. What did we do to you? So, they were worried communism would take us over because they were leaving us in poverty and lack of education. Let's continue.
Low levels of education. Therefore, British analysts at the time thought West African populations were vulnerable to communism.
In order to ensure that, come independence, their interests would be represented by their conservative friends in the north, the British had virtually created and strongly backed a political party for the region, the NPC.
In order to make sure that political influence and power was in the hands of their allies from the north, Ndi Fulani, the British virtually created a political party for them, the NCP. And let me give you evidence that this NCP was a British creation. Please, somebody should explain to me how people who were deeply instituted in Sharia law before the British came were suddenly creating democratic political party. Please. It's just simple reasoning. How can a Sharia society suddenly wake up that they've created democratic political party? NCP was a British party given to Fulani to run for them. Let's hear that again. Let's rewind.
In Africa was driven by massive poverty and very low levels of education. Therefore, British analysts at the time thought West African populations were vulnerable to communism.
In order to ensure that, come independence, their interests would be represented by their conservative friends in the north, the British had virtually created and strongly backed a political party for the region, the NPC.
In order to ensure that their interests were protected by their northern allies, they had virtually created and strongly backed a political party for them. Fulani created NCP for MPC for Fulani. Are you hearing? I just told you that a Sharia society cannot just suddenly wake up one day that they've created democratic political party. Sharia and Sharia and democracy are simply incompatible. They are two separate ideological systems with their own legal framework, their own political framework, their own economic framework. So, there you have it. Britain was involved in that election. Britain is controlling Fulani. Britain is still controlling the whole show till today. Have you heard?
A political party for the region, the NPC. But it could not hope to win enough votes nationally to win outright. So the British...
But they could not hope to win enough votes nationally to win outright. Have you heard? This one is the evidence that Britain also rigged the census. All those millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of extra fake people they claimed are in the north. Nigeria, the only country where there's more people in the desert than in the forest region. How? Did you hear? They didn't have enough votes in the north. Sorry. They didn't have enough votes in the north. So what did they do? Classic divide and rule. They turned down south to come and start knocking Igbo and Yoruba head together. Remember, before Southwest region and before Southeast region, two of them were just one region, Southern Protectorate. When they divided us and created Southwest region and Southeast region, they didn't divide North and create this North region and that North region. They didn't. It was only us in the South. Can you see when and where the divide and conquer started? So, initially, Britain created two sections of Nigeria, Northern Protectorate and Southern Protectorate. Then when it began to look like they were losing the whole thing, they started dividing the South. And then we even helped them by creating Midwest region. We said, let's even divide more. But Midwest region talk is for another day. We'll get to that one. Let's continue.
Votes nationally to win outright, so the British needed to ensure that they had the support of either the Eastern or Western parties. This would explain why Harold Smith claims he was ordered to divert resources to help candidates standing for the Party of the East, the NCNC, led by one of the founding fathers of Nigerian nationalism, Dr. Ezekwe, also known as Zik.
They had to...
You see, Britain, as they were forming political party for Fulani, they went in the background and they were pulling Zik strings. Puppeteering Zik. Let's listen.
Led by one of the founding fathers of Nigerian nationalism, Dr. Ezekwe, also known as Zik.
They had to fix Zik. And of course, there was stuff they could have got him for. Sent him to prison. But they didn't.
Blackmail.
He was forced to do a deal with
Forced. Blackmail.
This great nationalist had to do a deal with these illiterate peasants in the north. And that's what happened.
Whatever the true motives of the British...
You see? Did you hear what he just said? Zik was forced into doing a deal with the North. Forced. Which means blackmailed, coerced, strong-armed. Into doing a deal with the North. And you see, this nonsense shenanigans we see today where Vice President Oshibanjo is supposed to have a PhD. But then he's answering to a cattle rearer without even WAEC. It didn't start today. Listen to what the man said.
To do a deal with the North. This great nationalist had to do a deal with these illiterate peasants in the North.
Sorry about my cough. Did you hear that? This great nationalist had to do a deal with illiterate peasants from the North. So the Oshibanjo Buhari narrative didn't start today. Just like the whole Warren Chief narrative. All these things plus the rigging, all these things was given to us by Britain. Britain created hell on earth in Nigeria. Nigeria is a crime against humanity. Nigeria is a crime scene. Britain. Is this... So, if somebody is colonized, this is what happens to them. What's happening to us now in Nigeria? Is this what we're supposed to wake up every day and just accept? That what's happening to us in Nigeria is just what happens to you when you're colonized? So, what's happening today that they are killing hundreds of thousands of people? What's the difference between that and how many people were dying during slavery? Let's continue.
This great nationalist had to do a deal with these illiterate peasants in the north, and that's what happened.
Whatever the true motives of the British administration, to this day Harold Smith is adamant that the order to interfere with the elections came from the highest authority in the colony, the Governor-General himself, Sir James.
The order to interfere with the elections came from the highest authority in the colony, the Governor-General himself, who we all know would have had SOE agents crawling around his office with directives from motherland Britain. Right, let's continue.
From the highest authority in the colony, the Governor-General himself, Sir James Robertson.
Sir James Robertson.
During the royal visit in 1956.
To the Queen's Most Excellent Majesty, I have the honour to offer to your Majesty and to His Royal Highness, the Duke of Edinburgh, our most loyal welcome, and to express our deep and sincere appreciation of your gracious presence today.
He was a thug, and he had a terrible reputation, Robertson. He wasn't talking about people when he talked about Africans. They weren't people, they weren't human beings. We loved Africa.
See, so-called Robertson was a thug. When he was talking about Africans, he wasn't talking about people. Thanks to white supremacist ideology and mentality, to him, Africans weren't people. I mean, these were just slaves a few decades before in your eyes, in Britain's eyes.
He wasn't talking about people when he talked about Africans. They weren't people, they weren't human beings. We loved Africa. But these people who came in to do this job were a different breed. These were the ex-SOE and MI6, and they thought that they were really tough.
This is someone who was there at the time, who was working for the British in Nigeria at the time. A good man. A unique good man, Harold Wilson. He saw what was going on. He's telling you that SOE agents were coming in to do Britain's bidding. Special operative executives, MI6 agents. He's just told you. I'll rewind it. They were coming in to lay the groundwork for independence. Secret agents from Britain.
From breed. These were the ex-SOE and MI6, and they could.
Did you hear? Did you hear that?
MI6, and they thought that they were really tough, and they were.
Smith claims several of his colleagues were also asked to interfere in the elections, and they reluctantly fell in line, leaving him alone in his refusal to obey Robertson's orders.
Did you hear? Harold Smith said that some of his other colleagues were asked to help Britain rig election. So it wasn't only him. And he said a lot of them fell in line, leaving only him to be looking like the rebel. Did you hear? Should I play it again?
And they were.
Smith claims several of his colleagues were also asked to interfere in the elections, and they reluctantly fell in line, leaving him alone in his refusal to obey Robertson's orders. Isolated but still defiant, he was finally granted an audience with his boss at Government House.
I go up and I see him, and the first thing he says, I want you to know that everything that you've alleged about the elections is correct. I'm telling you this because you know far too much, and I want you to know how much trouble you're in. The colonial service is just like the army. You know what happens if you disobey orders in active service, and that's what's going to happen to you. I thought, I was shocked.
Did you hear? So, as Harold Smith, the good man, is rebelling against what Britain is doing in Nigeria with the elections, with the rigging, finally, Robertson, the Governor-General, summons him to the office and told him that, yes, everything you've alleged about the rigging is true, but that you're in a whole lot of trouble. You know how the military runs, and that the colonialism game is being run like the military. Did you hear that? Should I play again?
An audience with his boss at Government House.
I go up and I see him, and the first thing he says, I want you to know that everything that you've alleged about the elections is correct. I'm telling you this because you know far too much, and I want you to know how much trouble you're in. The colonial service is just like the army. You know what happens if you disobey orders in active service, and that's what's going to happen to you. I thought, I was shocked. And this big guy, I was so angry that I really would.
So, basically, the Governor-General of the zoo, Nigeria, on behalf of Britain, was bullying British consular staff or whatever into rigging elections. So you see, when people like me say there's mass British complicity in this crime, we're not just throwing accusations from the air or into the air, pulling them from the air and throwing it into the air. No. People were forced, coerced, and fewer, and only a handful have come forth to speak up against this crime against humanity committed by Britain on us, the Biafrans, and southern Nigerians at large.
Wouldn't have been surprised if he pulled out a pistol and shot me.
Robertson was so angry that Harold Wilson wouldn't have been surprised if Robertson pulled out a pistol and shot him. That's how desperate Britain was to make sure her agenda was successful in the rigging of elections in the zoo. Desperation.
There's a huge array of files here. Are these all your correspondence on this side? In the spare room of Harold and Carol Smith's home, piles of paperwork fill a large metal filing cabinet, much of it copies of unanswered letters to the great and the good, detailing Harold's allegations.
Doing this for many years.
With no recordings of the conversations he claims took place.
You see, he was writing letters to people, trying to stop what was going on. He was speaking out, trying to stop what was going on. But again, just like is happening to us today, Nnamdi Kanu has been going around the whole world shouting, speaking up. Back then, just like today, the British government just looked the other way as if they can't hear, they can't see. Because they were in the background pulling the strings. Let's hear that again.
Files here. Are these all your correspondence on this side? In the spare room of Harold and Carol Smith's home, piles of paperwork fill a large metal filing cabinet, much of it copies of unanswered letters to the great and the good, detailing Harold's allegations.
Doing this for many years.
With no recordings of the conversations he claims took place, and no copies of the orders he says he was given, he's unable to prove the serious claims he's making. The Smiths have fought a long, lonely and largely fruitless battle to have his story heard, but with nothing on paper and all those who could back up his story dead, why should anyone believe him? His wife, Carol.
You're quite right. We have not got written evidence and things we can say, there you are. Well, I know Harold's telling the truth. You either believe us or you don't.
What makes you so convinced that Harold isn't mistaken on this?
I've known him. I've been married to him 55 years. I know what he's like.
If you understand neo-colonialism and how it works, you understand how Britain can pull off all this stuff without a paper trail. Anyway, neo-colonialism, colonialism and slavery, that one's for another day. But you understand, if you understand them, you understand how Britain can pull off this stunt without... I mean, you know, someone is telling you we're running this thing like the army, so you stay in line. He's telling you, well, what are you going to do? You write complaint, nobody replies. Okay, you have a copy of your complaint, but no copy of the reply. So they can just say, we didn't hear, we didn't see, we didn't know. This is exactly what they're still doing to us today. This is exactly what Britain is still doing to us today. Let's continue.
I know the sort of person he is. I know the sort of values he holds. I don't think I would have had the courage to do what he's done, but at least I've had the courage to stay and support him in what he's doing.
Most of the people were elected unopposed because they tended to arrest the opposition, to exile them and beat them up.
And
well, I know Harold's telling the truth. You either believe us.
I just want to say, Harold Wilson's wife is a strong woman as well. A good woman too. A good woman that stayed by the side of a good man. Respect to two of them.
I've been married to him 55 years. I know what he's like. I know the sort of person he is. I know the sort of values he holds. I don't think I would have had the courage to do what he's done, but at least I've had the courage to stay and support him in what he's doing.
Most of the people were elected unopposed because they tended to arrest the opposition, to exile them and beat them up and sometimes even kill them if they...
Did you hear that? Most of the people were elected unopposed because they tended to arrest the opposition, exile them, beat them up, and even sometimes kill them. Should I... Let me just rewind.
Because they tend...
and support him in what he's doing.
Most of the people were elected unopposed because they tended to arrest the opposition, to exile them and beat them up and sometimes even kill them if they kept pushing their luck.
Academic and novelist Patrick Wilmot.
Did you hear that? Okay, let's continue. Patrick Wilmot
taught sociology at Ahmadu Bello University in Nigeria for 18 years. He believes Smith's allegations expose only a small part of the lengths British colonial officials were prepared to go to in the north in an effort to ensure that Britain's favoured party, the NPC, got elected unopposed.
Did you hear that? This Professor Wilmot believes that Harold Smith's allegations are just a small tip of the iceberg of all the real events and activities Britain was behind in making sure that the NPC from the north seized power. So this evidence we're even getting from Harold Wilson is just the tip of the iceberg. Sorry, from Harold Smith. It's just the tip of the iceberg.
The British were in control, the so-called native authority. The emirs, the local police, all of that was under British control and supervision. Mm-hmm. These people, they could have been removed, they could have been stopped at any time, but they were actually encouraged because the British wanted to hand over to them and they wanted them to control the northern region, which was the most powerful region in the country.
You see, did you hear that? The British were in control, but they were working with the traditional leaders, emirs. Listen, these were the first warrant chiefs Britain instituted in our lands to control us on their behalf. Let me play it again.
The local police, all of that.
They were also in charge of the local police, the army, everything. So basically, the police we have today, can you see why they still behave the way they do? The army we have today, can you see why they still behave the way they do? Because Britain created them. They were created during colonialism to hold us down. What are they doing today? Is it still not holding us down? When you protest, army will come and shoot you. You're just walking on the road. Just because you're wearing something decent, police will come and arrest you. I'll be SARS. Doesn't all sound like what Britain's army, and they just told you now, Britain was controlling army and police and everything.
BBC got elected unopposed.
The British were in control, the so-called native authority. The emirs, the local police, all of that was under British control and supervision. These people, they could have been removed, they could have been stopped at any time, but they were actually encouraged because the British wanted to hand over to them and they wanted them to control the northern region, which was the most powerful region in the country.
But you'd imagine that a government may have official control of an area, but it wouldn't always know what exactly people are doing on the ground in terms of the sort of thuggery you're talking about.
The British were completely aware because they had their officials at every level, in the police, the security services, they had control of the army. The key thing was to prevent people from running against you.
Did you hear that? Britain had their people in control of the key positions, army, security, just like Fulani is doing today. Controlling everything, army, security services, and
officials at every level, in the police, the security services, they had...
So they knew exactly what was going on all levels. They were on ground. They knew what was going on. They were behind it. They were orchestrating what was going on.
Control of the army. The key thing was to prevent people from running against you.
And the key thing was to prevent people from running against their interests, British interests.
What evidence do you have for these allegations?
No, these are not allegations. If you go to Nigeria, everybody, from the professors in the university to the people in the streets, will tell you that this has happened. I mean, there are history books written, but most of these history books will not have the sort of knowledge that people who will talk to you in Nigeria have.
Trying to look for answers in Nigeria, then. Children play behind the Reformed Christian Church of God in Arima town in southern Nigeria, outside the home of a man who's been part of the struggle for freedom and democracy in Nigeria all his life.
I'm Comrade Che Ibebura. I am now 74 years old. I'll be clocking 75 on November 16 this year.
On the walls are pictures of the leaders of Nigeria's independence movement, as well as a poster of his namesake, the Cuban revolutionary Che Guevara. In the 1950s, when Nigeria was still under British rule, he was a trade union leader and a member of Dr. Azikwe's NCNC, with strong opinions about the real intentions of the colonial power.
By 1956, I was 24 years old. So at that time, I was an activist. I started to draw political inspiration when I was about 20. See, I'm from a Christian background and believed in justice. And I know quite well that the intention was not to develop us.
Che Ibegura believes that Nigeria's first democratic elections were far from free and fair under British rule, and that little has changed since they left.
The Nigerians just got what was already on ground from the British. They started operating from what they saw. Whatever.
Did you hear that? This Biafran brother was on ground in 1960. He was already an activist in politics from age 20. And he said that what was going on then, nothing has changed compared to what's going on today. This is someone that was on ground back then, 60 years ago. And he's telling you that nothing has changed today.
Since they left.
Nigerians just got what was already on ground from the British. They started operating from what they saw. Whatever were.
Nigerians just got what was already on ground from the British, meaning that we just inherited the colonial structures they left behind. Which is why when I say to you that the Nigerian army, the Nigerian police, what they're doing to us today is exactly what they were doing to us back then, because they were set up to serve colonial interests. To suppress us back then, they are still suppressing us today. This guy who was there at the very beginning is telling you that they left the structures that they were using to control us during colonialism when they were leaving and handing us so-called independence. Zoo. Hi. People don't know. That zoo, Nigeria is a curse. Even if you're in diaspora, you think you're 5,000 miles away. You can't escape. The curse somehow will get to you. You almost cannot escape it. As long as Nigeria is still part of your paradigm, you cannot escape the clutches of this curse.
Trying to experience from Nigeria now was the structure laid down by the British.
Harold Smith's claims that he was asked by the country's governor to help ensure that a favoured candidate was elected fits with Che's memory of those early Nigerian elections.
Money was flowing to the north, both from the British government, the supporters from the British angle, and from the
elections.
Did you hear that?
Money was flowing to the north.
In elections.
Money was flowing to the north.
Money was flowing to the north. Did you hear that? Money was flowing to the north.
Both from the British government, the supporters from the British angle, and from the Arab world.
Money was flowing to the north, both from the supporters from the British angle and from the Arab world. Britain and the Arab world was sponsoring the Northerners and their political party. Did you hear that?
No master has ever given his slave the opportunity to rival him. Nigeria is a British baby. They can't just allow Nigeria to play their hands freely.
Did you hear that?
Otherwise, why are they colonial masters?
I've been looking through the papers of some of those colonial masters to see what they were prepared to say about their motives and their methods when it came to Nigeria's first elections, and they make interesting reading, like this letter from one Sir Peter Smithers.
I was Parliamentary Private Secretary of the Colonial Office through almost the whole period of decolonisation. I was present at most of the negotiations for independence, including that of Nigeria.
A secret agent, MP and diplomat, Sir Peter was a dashing figure, rumoured to be the model for Ian Fleming's James Bond. And in this letter, he details his part in the shaping of independent Nigeria, and he makes a frank admission about British attitudes to the leaders in the north, the Khan.
Are you hearing that? This guy that was saying that he was there and involved in most of the negotiations was a secret agent. They just told you he was a secret agent. Whether they based James Bond on him. So this thing was so important to Britain that they would send James Bond. Hey! So basically, keeping Nigeria one was so important Britain had to send in James Bond. And suddenly you begin to realize where this task of keeping Nigeria one started from. This long ago. 60 years ago at least. That Nigeria must be kept one. This was a British created idea. So there was that, and that's why, nearly 60 years later, even when Obama is coming out saying Nigeria must remain one, he after saying that he'll send G.I. Joe in form of terrorists. Let's continue.
No rulers.
The attraction of the Kano rulers was that they had long and successful experience of government. They therefore offered an obvious choice to head the new experiment. It was, in fact, difficult at the time to see an alternative for the early stages of independence.
Sir Peter died
You see, so basically, Britain's the excuse they told themselves for giving power to the North was because the northern rulers had been practicing kingship and feudalism longer than us. So, in other words, they were more civilized than us. But these were the same people Britain, in the same breath, described as peasants, illiterate peasants. But then you're giving them power just because they've been calling themselves king for longer than us. Calling themselves king just because they came into another man's land, Fulani, you came into Hausa people's land, took over the land, started calling yourself king. Meanwhile, we in the south, king wasn't our thing. We were Republicans. So, this is the criteria Britain used to give North power. Hey, Britain. Hey. I keep asking this question. Britain, what did we do to you guys? What? Please. I've been asking this question for almost 3 years now. Nobody wants to answer me. Please. I've thought. My brain wants to burst. What did we do to you, Britain?
last year at the age of 92. Sir James Robertson, the Governor-General of Nigeria at independence, and the man Harold Smith alleges ordered him to interfere with the electoral process, died in 1983. But again, his memoirs suggest that he did not always play by the rules. Recalling Nigeria's first general election in 1959, he wrote...
You see, all of them that perpetrated that crime, many of them are now dying. But then, the narrator is saying that this Robertson, Governor General, his memoirs suggest that he didn't always play by the rules. You see?
That before all the counting had finished, rumours began to circulate that the NCNC from the east and the Action Group in the west were getting together and might...
So, before the elections even finished... Before the... Hi, Britain. They say when breeze blow, foul yash they show. British people, if you know any Nigerians, ask them for the translation of that. When breeze blow, foul yash go show. So, even before the election was finished, rumors were going round that NCNC and Action Group will form alliance. I mean, can you see where this phenomenon that goes on in Nigeria, where you go and do an election, everybody will be seeing the rigging. And then, even before the election was finished, people will be asking, who won? Who won? As if they didn't see the rigging. But they were all seeing it when they were voting. But when they finish voting, they start as if they didn't see the rigging. Who won? Anyway, so rumors started circulating that NCNC and Action Group might form an alliance. And guess what? I'm sure we all know this is the worst possible thing Britain wanted.
Form a coalition. Now this would be a disaster for Britain's hopes of the Northern Party. Rumours began to circulate. His memoirs suggest that he did not always play by the rules. Recalling Nigeria's first general election in 1959, he writes that before all the counting had finished, rumours began to circulate that the NCNC from the east and the Action Group in the west were getting together and might form a coalition. Now this would be a disaster for Britain's hopes of the Northern Party, the NPC, taking power. Sir James was alarmed to discover that even though there were a number of seats still to be declared, if the Action Group and the NCNC formed a coalition, they would have a majority in the House of Representatives.
I believe this could be...
Did you hear that? The British knew that if the NCNC from the east and the Action Group from the west formed an alliance, they will have the majority in the House, in the Parliament. And they didn't want this because they wanted the North to be in power. Hi. Zoo, Britain. See, Britain. By the time all this is finished there, your name will become synonymous with Fulani. When they call Britain, they will call Fulani. You see how Fulani did Hausa? They were saying Hausa Fulani. When we finish this thing, the whole world and the whole of history will now know you as British Fulani. In fact, by the time we finish, Fulani will be coming to Britain. You see the terror we are seeing they are doing to us on our own land. Shebi Fulani, they think, they say if not for the sea, they'll conquer the world. Don't worry. The corruption in Nigeria, they'll soon start collecting passports. They'll soon start coming here. Don't worry. Let's continue.
If the Action Group and the NCNC formed a coalition, they would have a majority in the House of Representatives.
I believe this could be very dangerous for Nigeria's future. As from all I'd learned of the Northerners, they might well decide to leave the Federation, for they would not readily accept a national government of Southern parties.
So basically, Britain realized if Action Group and NCNC formed an alliance, according to them, it would be dangerous for Nigeria because Nigeria will break, because the North want to be ruled by Southerners. Why? Why is this? To know why is you just need to ask why Northerners still call us slaves today. They still call us their slaves because the Northerners were the ones kidnapping us and selling us into slavery. So to them, we'd always be slaves. So you can imagine to them, for us to now suddenly start ruling them. Why do you think they didn't even let Jonathan warm that seat? Go. They didn't even let the guy settle down. They had to chase him away. So, to the Northerners, they weren't going to have it. But you know the irony of this whole thing about Northerners calling us slaves, as well, Fulani calling us slaves, the irony is that we, from the south of Nigeria, especially in the Igbo, were the original freeborns. The original freeborns, because we were Republicans. We didn't have king. When you don't have king, you are free. You're not subject to anyone other than maybe whatever God you believe in. But Fulani were born out of Moorish conquest and enslavement of first the Berbers and then Sub-Saharan West Africans. That's where Fulani came from. If you go into history, there is no Fulani anywhere in history before 1,000 years ago. Fulani just sprang into the history books only 1,000 years ago. And they want to come and take our land. We that we've been on this planet for 100,000 years. Fulani has only been on this planet for 1,000 years, and they want to come and take our land. And you, Britain, you're supporting them. Why? What did we do to you? Like I said, the sad irony is we're the original freeborns. Fulani were born out of Moorish conquest and enslavement. That's why Fulani have no land. That's why they're wandering people. When the Moorish Empire declined about 1,000 years ago, the Fulani broke free, got into cattle rearing, because back then cattle was still some form of currency. The more cattle you had, the more you were seen as a wealthy man. Which is how Fulani still see the world today. The more cattle you have, the more, you are seen as a wealthy man. Got into cattle herding, started traversing the Sahel, and over time started causing trouble with the already settled people they were meeting, started grabbing land. This is what Fulani have been doing their entire history. Land grabbing, and then slavery, enslavement, subjugation, war. If we want, our enemies within in West Africa are Fulani, and Britain is working with them to make sure that West African region does not rise, because that's where Britain committed the greatest crime against humanity ever. And she's scared that if we rise up, we will not only crush her economy with our emerging economies, the lawsuit alone for compensation for this crime against humanity will cripple her economy. Then the additional lawsuit from the Caribbeans, from the black Americans, will totally not just cripple her economy, but shake the economy of all the Western world countries, if not even cripple all of them. This is what Britain is shitting herself for. That she's willing to actually go as far as genociding all of us. So that just to erase the evidence, commit another crime to erase the evidence for the previous crime. Britain. Chai. Britain. I had a lot of respect for Britain growing up, I thought Britain was civilized. But now I'm questioning what Britain calls civilization. Is it really civilization or barbarism? Savagery? Banditry? Banditry, just like Fulani. I said it, Fulani and Britain. It's beginning to look to me like you're similar people. And this is why I'm pushing for the new nomenclature, British Fulani. You guys have the same behavior. Banditry. What's Fulani doing today? They said we should call them bandits. When we were calling them Fulani headsmen, Fulani terrorists, they said no. Call us bandits. Britain, what you did in the past was banditry, organized banditry. So when I begin to compare it to Fulani, don't blame me. Let's continue.
According to Sir James, as Governor-General under the Constitution, he was required to appoint as Prime Minister the person who seemed to him most likely to command a majority in the House of Representatives. In his opinion,
So Governor-General Robertson was required to appoint a minister who, in his opinion, had the ability to control majority in the House. I thought it was free and fair election. So, Britain. I thought it was free and fair election. So, what's Governor General doing? Appointing who he thought to most be able to control majority in the House. Britain, you've just disgraced your own democracy. I'm sorry. You see, everything you've brought to us since we met you guys, nothing has ever worked for us. Your slavery, it didn't work for us. Your colonization, it didn't work for us. Your independence, it didn't work for us. Your democracy, your so-called democracy, it didn't still work for us. Your aid, it hasn't worked for us. Everything, Britain, Biko. But meanwhile, your own country is shining. Everywhere shining, everybody loving life, chilling. Meanwhile, genocide is going on in your former colony. You are just doing head, looking the other way as if, like airhead blonde, as if you don't know what's going on. Britain, don't worry. This mod, we in Nigeria, we've been rolling with Fulani. So, Engwa, enter the mod ring. Let all of us roll. Let's be rolling. As the breeze blow, foul nyashe show. Let's continue. So, Robertson was... Robertson, whilst promoting free and fair election, was also tasked with appointing who he felt Hi. So it was even just based on who he felt who most Britain's one was who most be able to control majority in the house, but Robertson's one was who he felt would be able to do that. Okay. One Nigeria people, you see your democracy in Nigeria. You see your democracy. See the people that give you democracy. Oh. It's not Nnamdi Kanu that made this video. No, this one is not Nnamdi Kanu. Shebi, okay, they've illegally locked him now. All of you are happy. No more noise. Saw some people drinking brandy. Say, okay, peace and quiet, okay? Have they stopped killing? Fulani, have Fulani stopped killing and kidnapping and raping? Have they stopped? Nnamdi Kanu is not the one that made this video. I'm not the one that made this original video, and I'll also upload this video itself. This audio itself onto my website, so I can listen to it without me talking. I just needed to break it down for people. This audio, you can clearly hear the voices. Is Oyibo people, is white people that made this audio. They are the ones telling us. This is why I still have some faith in some British people. They are the ones telling us, see what their country did to you. But some of you refuse to hear. Ochiente, say, no, one Nigeria. And I can ask you, what has one Nigeria ever done for you? Look, see how they gave you one Nigeria. Fulani, you're implicated though in this crime against humanity. It is not only Britain. You are implicated. Two of you have been working as gang members with Britain ringleader. You, boy, doing boy for Britain. For forever long Britain came into our land and you entered our land 250 years ago. You guys met each other, realized you had something in common, which is why I'm saying let's change the nomenclature to British Fulani. Realized you had something in common, that you were foreigners, you were both gangs, criminal gangs. Why not work together to rob the locals, which is what you did and are still doing till today, and still planning to do till the future, unless someone stops you. Britain. Anyway, let's continue.
Even though the count was not yet over, this was the northern leader, Abu Bakr. And so, after a brief discussion, he invited him to form a government.
Did you hear that? I'll rewind, don't worry. So, even though the count of all the votes for the election wasn't over, it was already the northern leader, Abu Bakr. Hey, zoo. Hey. You see why I say Nigeria is a curse? Even though I'm far away from the zoo, but I'm still inside the rabbit hole. Hey. I'm still inside the rabbit hole. Let me rewind. Let's hear.
As Governor General under the Constitution, he was required to appoint as Prime Minister the person who seemed to him most likely to command a majority in the House of Representatives. In his opinion, even though the count was not yet over, this was the northern leader, Abu Bakr. And so, after a brief discussion, he invited him to form a government.
Did you hear? They haven't finished counting election, though. But Robertson was required to appoint who he felt best suited to control a majority in the Senate, Abi Parliament. And for Robertson, that was already Abu Bakr, Sultan of Sokoto. So even before they finished counting votes, Robertson already invited Sultan of Sokoto for talks. Let's talk how share the loot and the spoils. You see, all Nigeria. Hi. But some people will still listen to this thing and still be dragging that they must be one Nigeria. This is the one I don't understand. It's not Nnamdi Kanu that made this audio. I'm not the one. You can clearly hear his Oyibo people's voices. His white people's voices. But some of you will still be hell-bent. Fulani, you even. We know you've been working for Britain. But are you not tired of just being their boy? Don't you want to carve your own destiny for you and your own people? Don't you want to carve your own destiny? You finally grabbed land in the north. Can't you just chill? Can't you just relax? We're in the 21st century. Why are you guys still behaving like you were behaving in the 17th century? Conquering, killing, enslaving, and raping everybody. Why? That's 400 years ago. Why? Why are you still stuck in a 400-year-old mentality? So, let's continue. So, they've invited Ahmadu Bello for talks. That's Robertson, the Governor General of the zoo back then. Has invited Robertson for has invited Ahmadu Bello for talks. Even before they finish counting election votes, on how to now become the Prime Minister, which we know is where the real power was. President was just ceremonial. You see how they dribbled Zeke. So, Southerners, we are the ones that fought for all that independence. Because when you look at all the names of all the activists, you know another name there. Because they and Britain were working together to hold us down, starting from slavery. So, why would they suddenly start campaigning for independence? So, we Southerners campaign, and finally got it. And they dribbled us still. And gave the real power to the Northerners, who didn't campaign. You see, I keep telling this zoo, in fact, I keep telling everybody in that space called Nigeria, if there was a way or somehow to pause time, press pause, and time in Nigeria will just stop. Everybody will just stop where they are, whatever they are doing. Everybody will just freeze, stop. And as you pause time, you somehow can download the entirety of Nigeria's history from 1999 back to military rule, back to civil war, back to independence, back to colonialism, back to slavery, back to even before slavery. If there was a way you could just download all this history in sequence, not anyhow, arrange it properly starting from far back as possible up to the present, like a film, like a story. Just download it into the heads of every single Nigerian. And then after download it, you unpause.
you unfreeze time so that everybody carries on, as normal. But only that this time, they now have the entire history of Nigeria in their head. As soon as you press on pause, I can swear to you, I can guarantee you that Nigeria will end within 1 hour. Within 1 hour. If we all knew the history of the zoo, some people will still have people shouting, one Nigeria, I love my country, one Nigeria. Anyway, let's continue.
And I did so on the grounds that the leader of the party with the greatest number of seats was surely most likely to be able to form a government which would win the support of the House.
Mm-hmm.
As far as I remember now, I took this action entirely on my own and did not consult the Secretary of State, for the matter was urgent and could not wait.
So, by his own...
You see? So, by his own admission, he was fiddling with the elections. Claiming that he took the decision on his own. I mean, come on, this guy is an ex-SOE agent. Come on. SOE is what later became MI5 and MI6. In fact, did you know that there is MI1, MI2, MI3, all the way to MI9? Some of them have actually now become defunct. They don't operate anymore. But I think there's MI4 to MI9 are still operational. So, he took the decision on his own to appoint Nigeria's president even before or Nigeria's leader, prime minister, even before they finished counting votes for election. By his own words, oh. Zoo. Damnable zoological republic. They've turned Nigeria into a giant meat grinder. This Britain and Fulani. Britain, that's what you constructed in that space. You just built a giant meat grinder, killing people, wasting lives, killing dreams, wasting dreams. And you'll be running around the world shouting, champion of human rights, champion of human rights. Giving us aid. Aid. When you're looting, when you're getting free oil. You get free oil and you give us aid. Who's fleeing who?
So it was urgent and could not wait.
That the matter was urgent and could not wait. That's why I took the decision.
Though, by his own admission, Sir James Robertson was determined to see the North in control at independence and was prepared to bend the rules to achieve this.
Mm-hmm. You see? James Robertson was determined to see the North in power and didn't even care what the elections was saying. He was ready to bend the rules. The same rules created by Britain, no? No, Britain, I think it's about time to coin a name like Zoo for you. Because, I mean, to even create something like the Zoo. Hey! Hey, Britain. So, basically, that whole election, there was no point. There was no point. Why were people voting that you were giving them independence? But you already knew who you were. You'd already made up your mind who you were going to put in power. So, what was all the hoo-ha for? This is your democracy now, Abi. Let's continue.
In control at independence and was prepared to bend the rules to achieve this. But were the British prepared to go as far as interfering in the voting process itself? If so, how was this done? There are those who believe the British had laid the foundations for the electoral success of the North years before by falsifying the results of a national census. Professor David Anderson.
I don't hear. You see all this ballot stuffing we are seeing today in the zoo. Britain invented it too. But typically, you know, Britain is Britain now, so they still have more sense than Fulani. So it wasn't outright ballot stuffing like Fulani. Fulani will send 8-year-old to go and vote. Vote finish, go and vote again. They will thumbprint the second hand. They will send the same 8-year-old. After voting, they do thumbprint. They will send him to vote again. They will thumbprint the second thumb. Hi. You see where they learnt it from? Because Fulani, what did Fulani know about democracy before Britain came? So suddenly Fulani is now giving you ballot box to vote. You see why when they are stuffing ballots, to them it doesn't mean anything. To them, election means you must win. You must do anything to win. Why will Buhari threaten all of you during election that if he doesn't win, you dogs and baboons will rain blood at you or whatever nonsense he said? Why would he threaten you? Do you think the election mattered to him other than just he must win? See what I say? I'm beginning to say Britain and Fulani. There's no difference between these two people, though. Let's continue.
In the 1950s, it was certainly to the advantage of the British to do, as you've described, to increase the population of the North, because it would shift the relative balance of power in the Assembly.
Success of the North.
So, instead of ballot box stuffing, Britain, what they did was to rig the census. As we all know, Nigeria is the only country where the people in the desert are more than the people in the forest. You know, I remember I read one article one time when a Nigerian pilot was talking about what he saw from the air. That it was a lie. That it did not. You just see sparse land. Even when you see the cities, they are tiny compared to the ones in the south. And when you now I even add all the slums around the cities in the south. Think about it. You have a shanty town like Ajegunle in Lagos with over 1 million people. In that tiny part of tiny Lagos. How many shanty towns have you seen in the north like Ajegunle? I'm not saying there's no poor people in the north. Yes, there's Almajiri roaming everywhere. Poor Hausa kids. Victims of Fulani barbarism. But how many Ajegunle scale shanty towns do you find in the north? And they're telling you they have more. Kano. Kano is the second biggest population in the zoo. Kano. From where? So, Britain rigged census to make it look like North had more population. I mean, all this information, I'm sure this is not even, a lot of this is not new. I'm sure we all know, even if you don't know the whole thing or seen this or heard this audio before, we all know bits and bobs of it. We all know that census was fake. It's not today people start coming out saying the whole thing was fake. So, let's continue. So, Britain rigged census as the invention of what became ballot box stuffing in today's zoo, in today's Nigeria.
The voting process itself. If so, how was this done? There are those who believe the British had laid the foundations for the electoral success of the North years before by falsifying the results of a national census. Professor David Anderson.
In the 1950s, it was certainly to the advantage of the British to do, as you've described, to increase the population of the North, because it would shift the relative balance of power in the Assembly.
The suggestion that the British were anything other than impartial arbitrators of Nigeria's independence is not popular with veterans of the colonial service, like Gerald Summerhays, who worked in Nigeria from 1952 to 1981, starting out as an assistant district officer before rising to permanent secretary of a ministry in the north. He's adamant that neither he nor anyone he worked with interfered in any way with local elections held in his area, though he does remember talk that the census had been fiddled.
So even when they are denying it, that Britain couldn't have rigged the election, the evidence is so overwhelming that they can't deny hearing talks, like rumors, that the elections were fiddled. This to show you how blatant the thing must have been back then. It must have been so blatant everybody could see it. Even a newborn baby could see it. Just like how a newborn baby can see that an election in Nigeria tomorrow is rigged.
Various allegations going on. There was one, which I remember, featuring in a newspaper, alleging that a village of 5,000 people had been discovered in one area which had not been counted previously. Well, that sounded, shall we say, a trifle unlikely. The more general allegations were that parts of districts were counted twice. And
hey, man, this thing gets worse. This thing gets worse. So, I'm sure we all heard a few weeks ago when Governor Zulum came out and said there were some local governments in the state that didn't exist. Oh yeah, Ngwa, come and hear where it started from. Come and hear who invented it, who taught us. Who? Tada! Britain again. Well, I'll rewind it. So let's hear again. Let's rewind.
Featuring in a newspaper, alleging that a village of 5,000
had been fiddled.
Well, there was various allegations going on. There was one, which I remember, featuring in a newspaper, alleging that a village of 5,000 people had been discovered in one area which had not been counted previously.
So there was an allegation after the election in the newspaper that a village of 5,000 people had been discovered that hadn't been discovered previously. Does that not sound to you like local government area that doesn't exist? Zulum is talking about. This is an election Britain controlled to give us independence. And suddenly they were discovering villages with 5,000 people that hadn't been discovered. Oh God. Ihe ọjọọ na-akpa ọchị. Where I'm from, they say the most evil things are ironically funny. Hey. So suddenly they were discovering random villages with up to 5,000 people that they hadn't discovered before. and check this out. more.
One, which I remember, featuring in a newspaper, alleging that a village of 5,000 people had been discovered in one area which had not been counted previously. Well, that sounded, shall we say, a trifle unlikely. The more general allegations were that parts of districts were counted twice.
Another allegation was that some districts were counted twice.
Britain. Boy, I don't know who is worse, so Fulani, who is doing the most barbaric version of this thing, or Britain, who invented it in the first place. I don't know. I don't know who is worse, wallahi. The person that invented it, or the person that took it to the next level. Hi! So, they start discovering villages of 5,000 people that they didn't count before. And some districts that were counted twice. So this is the kind of thing that was going on. In Nigeria, being controlled by Britain, claiming to be bringing us democracy. See the people that say they brought us rule of law, that they civilized us. See the people that said they civilized us, that were primitive. You see, when I now question what Britain describes as civilization, whether it's actually really civilization or barbarism, can you see why? Let's continue.
All general allegations were that parts of districts were counted twice, and allegations were made that this was done. I have no knowledge where it was or not. The only place I do know where it wasn't done is where I was dealing with it.
Yeah.
How likely do you think it is that this happened in the north?
The answer is no. Out of the question.
Why is that?
Because it was controlled by the British administration, and the British administration would not have done that.
Well, it's the British administration that's being accused of collaborating with local people to ensure that was done for Britain's own interest.
Well, they can accuse it as much as they like, I'm afraid. There's so many mislead. It's so easy to make accusations of that type. The only thing I can say that I was actively involved in it, and I knew the other people who were involved in it, and many of them, and I do not believe that one of them, for one moment, would ever have done anything like this.
But you can't be sure they didn't, can you?
You can't be certain of anything, can you, unless you see it yourself? If there had been any involvement of that, there would have been some form of policy statements, there would have been some form of suggestions from above that should have been done, and I would have heard that myself, because I don't think for one moment they would have given it just to one or two people. One would have heard it widely, and I did not hear it, and in fact I've been absolutely horrified to the mere thought of it.
It's very...
See how this one is dancing around, trying to deny and dodge, Britain's involvement in the whole thing. Yeah, that's what Britain does. They know how to close up ranks.
Very difficult to find evidence that elections have been rigged. People tend not to write about these things. If one sees ballot boxes being stuffed, voters being bussed around, if one uncovers fraud on the electoral roll, these are all forms of proof. But the elections in Nigeria in 1959, none of those things were reported.
But it seems that finding the evidence is perhaps less of a problem than actually getting my hands on it. Amongst the hundreds of files housed in London's National Archives that cover this period of British rule in Nigeria are two marked closed for 100 years.
Classified. State secret. Britain, what did you do that you are keeping secrets? That you are keeping classified for 100 years? What did you do that you don't want us to see? Britain, what did you do? Let's continue.
Archives that cover this period of British rule in Nigeria are two marked closed for 100 years. They deal with the role of both the Governor-General, Sir James Robertson, and the leader of the NCNC, Dr. Ezekwe, but aren't due to be open to the public for another half a century. I've put in a request under the Freedom of Information Act to view them now, but I'm still awaiting a response. as is Professor David Anderson.
Clearly someone in the British government, when those files were classified, didn't want us historians to know something about what they contain. And that raises my suspicions that those files might contain information about whatever deals were brokered between the British government and the NCNC.
You see how they were puppeteering Zik, controlling Zik. They've hidden those files, saying it's classified. They don't even want their own historians to see it. Classified for 100 years. We still have 50 years to go. You see? Let's continue.
NCNC. Because it is certainly the case that the NCNC could not have won the election support it did without British support, or nor that it could have formed a coalition with the MPC at independence without British support. So I would love to see what's in those two files about Sir James Robertson and Dr. Ezekwe.
Nigeria gained its independence.
I, to be honest, as much as I respect Harold Wilson and as a good man, I respect his wife also, and I also respect the researchers that made this documentary for speaking on the side of truth and justice on behalf of those being subjugated. If not for people like you, we will be more lost than we are today. In my eyes, you are a hero. You and people like you helping us, you are heroes. You are true humanitarians. You are people who see an injustice and speak up. And you can't get more human than that. Thank you. But let's continue.
Dr. Ezekwe.
Nigeria gained its independence from Britain on October the 1st, 1960.
It's a very touching moment as the Union Jack is brought down in darkness and the...
October the 1st, 1960, so-called independence, the greatest, the day of, which one is really a bigger scam? Is it the amalgamation or the independence? Or 1999 constitution? Just history of scam. Everything, scam. Amalgamation, scam. Independence, scam. Have you seen for yourself now? 1999 constitution, scam. We the people. Amalgamation, they said everybody signed, but we all know it was only a handful of people. Everybody else in Nigeria didn't even know what was going on. Independence, is it not them telling you now that 2 files have been classified for 100 years? They don't want you to know what happened. Just like they didn't want everybody to know what was going on before amalgamation until the few people they gathered around signed. Everything, secrecy, secrecy, secrecy. Till today, they're still scamming us. 1999 constitution. Nobody knew. Next thing, Abdul Salami just popped up. A new constitution with the people. You see? Your history of Nigeria. History of scam. And some people are shouting restructuring. And I keep asking them, how do you restructure a fraud? Something is already a fraudulent entity. So, how do you restructure a fraud? Do you expect to get some sort of balance or justice by restructuring a fraud? Then somehow it whitewashes it and makes it no longer a fraud? Man. Anyway, let's continue.
Brought down in darkness and the Nigerian flag is gradually taking its place.
Whether engineered by the British or not, as the Union flag came down, the North was in the driving seat. The leader of the NPC, Abu Bakar Tafawa Balewa, was Prime Minister. His coalition partner, Dr. Ezekwe, took the role of Governor-General and later President.
And on the morning of Nigerian independence, greetings to you all, fellow countrymen. The deed has been done. It is finished.
But hopes for Nigeria's future were soon to be dashed.
You see, under scam, that independence, do you guys actually know that just before the independence, some people went to Britain to go and sign everything and agree everything, and I think they handed over some mace or something like that. The people that went was Ahmadu Bello. Zeke didn't go. Zeke was cut out of it. I think they also cut out Awolowo. I can't remember now. They went to go and agree. Only to come and do you parade, that is independence. Gave Zeke bogus uniform, that is president. Anyway, let's continue.
Continued tensions between the three regions, but Nigeria's future was soon to be dashed. Continued tensions between the three regions, exacerbated by the dominance of the North, contributed to the political instability that led to a coup.
So, after their so-called stupid independence, continued tensions between the different regions exacerbated, that's increased, like fueled, like provoked by the Northerners' domination, which is what we are still seeing today. Can you now see that this born to rule was a British invention? They gave Fulani the right to start claiming born to rule. They gave Fulani power. So Fulani has always been controlling. You just heard it yourself. Let me rewind. So everybody will hear.
Fellow countrymen, the deed has been done. It is finished.
But hopes for Nigeria's future were soon to be dashed. Continued tensions between the three regions, exacerbated by the dominance of the North, contributed to the political instability that led to a coup, a counter-coup, and, within 7 years, the Biafran Civil War that cost the lives of as many as 3 million Nigerians.
3 million. Did you all hear that? Tensions between the regions, exacerbated by the North, by the dominance of the North, will eventually lead to the coup. So it's not as if Nzeogun and his crew woke up one day and just decided to do coup. Something happened. Did you all hear that? Something happened. And then from the coup to the counter coup, and then to the civil war. Why? Because of the seed of "we are born to rule" Britain planted at independence. A lot of people don't know how deep Britain's hand is inside this thing. In fact, a friend of mine told me once that after independence, Britain actually set up a think tank just to be thinking of ways to keep Nigeria subdued and subverted and exploited. In Britain, they set it up in Britain. Anyway, let's continue. Now, there's a lot to say. Man, Britain. Let's continue.
Nigerians, largely through starvation and disease. In his memoirs, Harold Smith records 7 years the Biafran Civil War that cost the lives of as many as 3 million Nigerians.
Did you hear that? So it all led to the Biafran Civil War, which cost the lives This is Britain telling you 3 million now. Oh, it's not Nnamdi Kanu anymore. Because some of you, when we say 3 million Biafrans were killed, you'll be saying, where did he get that number? Did he count? This is Britain telling you 3 million. And for those of us that know, we know. Me, I know that the real figure was 6 million. That was the number that was written written at the time. And over the years, I have seen Wikipedia. When I've seen Wikipedia over the years edit this figure down. I remember when I first looked into the Biafran world, it was quoting 5 million. And then years later, I looked into it looked into the Wikipedia page again. It was now quoting 3 million. And then I remember when I looked into it again, it was saying 1.5 million. And today, it's saying 1 million. 1 million Biafrans died during the war. You see how Britain is revising history? Who removed history from school? It's not Fulani don't know anything about it. Don't get me wrong, Fulani know their history very well. They know they came conquering and they came enslaving. They know their history very well. But Fulani don't know anything about teaching history, how to twist history so that they can even keep you enslaved. They don't know anything like that. It's Britain that told them to remove history from your school. Think about it. Anyway, let's continue.
Largely through starvation and disease. In his memoirs, Harold Smith...
This is how they killed us during the Biafran War, starvation and disease. Does this not sound to you like a biological warfare? Starvation and disease. And I can guarantee you, seeing that Britain was willing to put the Cold War aside to team up with Russia to kill us, if there was a way those people could use chemical weapons, they would have. Even if there was a way they could nuke us, they would have just nuked. It's just like they nuke us, then they will contaminate the oil. You know, it's oil. They want to kill. They want to kill us because of oil. Chai. Oil. And now gold. Because a few weeks ago, you know, Britain set up I don't know whether it's gold mining or gold processing company somewhere in the north there, whether Zamfara. Yes, Britain is now in Nigeria extracting gold. Though. Basically, it's now Operation Loot the Place Dry. That's what because she can see what's going on. Britain can see what's going on now. You know, I'm sure she knows somewhere that if like say this my trap go soon break or everybody go soon boss zoo ja. So the looting is now times 5, 10. Loot the place dry. Anything you can loot. And in fact, oh God! In fact, what Britain wants is even a war. Let them start fighting so that in the confusion of war they can loot more. They can send. Oh, don't worry, we are peacekeeping contingent. But as they are peacekeeping, they are looting. But as the war is going on, they are killing us and erasing the evidence for their crime against humanity. Thinking that if they erase the evidence, then they can erase the guilt. Anyway, let's continue.
Through starvation and disease. In his memoirs, Harold Smith records the fate of their cook and their nanny caught up in the chaos.
Grace and William worked for us and we trusted them and treated them as friends. We loved them. We left Africa and were very worried for them. Nigeria was on the brink of freedom and independence. They believed it because they trusted the British. They were Commonwealth citizens and our Queen was their Queen. We know that their trust was misplaced. The British had betrayed them.
He's talking about the staff that worked for him from southern Nigeria. They believed in Britain. They trusted Britain. They saw the British Queen as their queen. but Britain betrayed them. The irony is that Britain even forced Christianity on them, but still allows Muslims to control them. So why give them Christianity if you still don't even trust them? You give them Christianity, but you still didn't trust them. That you allow Muslims, a totally different religion, even from your own, you allow Muslims to control them. Hey, Britain. Just like you are willing to work with your arch enemy, Russia, during Cold War, to suppress us. Britain, hey, Britain, what did we do to you guys now? What? Please. What? Please, somebody should tell me, what did we do to you guys? 250 years of subjugation. Now pushing us towards extinction. Please, because I don't know if I'm missing something. So basically, it's beginning to look like me that just to keep the Biafrans down, Britain, you go as far as partnering with the devil. Whether it's Muslims, whether it's terrorists, whether it's communists, you will partner with them to keep Biafrans down. What did we do to you? Let's continue.
William's body, his human remains, first...
So yes, he's talking about these people, southern Nigerians, probably Biafrans, who knows, about southern Nigerians that worked for him. I think from their names, they're even Biafrans. He's talking about how Britain abandoned them and how they died during the Civil War. And you're telling me this is a crime against humanity, starting from slavery. Immediately after slavery, colonialism started. Another crime against humanity. All those locking Zeke and Awolowo up, and Nahoro, all of them. For what? Because they were protesting for freedom. Is that not a crime against humanity? So you finished one crime against humanity, slavery. Immediately after that, you jumped into another one, colonialism. Immediately after colonialism, you jumped into another crime against humanity, Biafran genocide. And today, you orchestrated SARS, another crime against humanity. And today, you are backing Fulani headsmen. Another crime against... basically supporting another... Britain, hey, please, don't tell me human rights again, that you are championing human rights. Please, please. It's a sick joke now. It's a bloody sick joke now, because nothing has changed. What you were doing back then is nothing has changed. It's all still the same. Let's continue.
Stood in a ditch in Biafra.
He died in a ditch in Biafra. Aye, Britain, man. Britain. Aye. Britain. The first time I watched this thing, I cried.
British had betrayed them. William's body, his human remains, first rested in a ditch in Biafra.
Harold Smith is crying. He's crying. Can you imagine? People that he lived with, people that worked for him, found...
Dreadfully. I mean, no country's gone through 50 years of absolute bloody hell.
Yes.
And it's all due to the British.
Harold, it seems surprising.
No country has gone through 50 years of absolutely bloody hell. And it's all because of the British. Harold Smith, thank you for telling the truth. Thank you. Thank you. Britain, what did we do to you guys now? What did we do to you guys? Since we ever met you guys, since you guys left your own land and entered our own, we
didn't even chase you away. You just there killing us and slaving us. What did we do to you guys? What kind of horror and injustice is this? Sorry, my Sorry, my dear Biafrans. I had to compose myself. Britain, I know my tears don't mean anything to you. I'm not crying for your pity. My tears are for humanity. My tears are for all of humanity. Who's just sitting there watching this genocide happen? And the day I decided to blow a bomb, the day I decided to explode something up, you quickly tagged me a terrorist. You won't tell anybody what you did to me before I got angry. We must continue.
As you know, that the Nigerians, particularly the Nigerians, would need any help in rigging elections. I mean, these days we hear nothing.
Exactly. Nigerians, we don't need help rigging elections. Britain wrote the book for us.
That's not true.
I think, but rigging of elections.
Look, we're the ones who rigged the elections. We're the ones who gave this example. If they ever needed lessons, we did every dirty trick in the book, and we did it in Nigeria. They didn't do it. We could say, oh, we can't trust them. The way they spoke about them in London, oh, they're children.
So you believe then we taught them all they knew?
Yes. Yes, we've destroyed democracy in Africa.
It's deeply frustrating that although the testimonies of Smith and many Nigerians help in rigging elections, I mean, these days we hear nothing.
True. Dreadfully. I mean, no country's gone through 50 years of absolute bloody hell, and it's all due to the British.
Harold, it seems surprising, though, that the Nigerians, particularly the Nigerians, would need any help in rigging elections. I mean, these days we hear nothing.
Not true. That's not true.
Nothing but rigging of elections.
True. Look, we're the ones who rigged the elections. We're the ones who gave this example. If they ever needed lessons, we did every dirty trick in the book, and we did it in Nigeria. They didn't do it. We could say, oh, you can't trust them. The way they spoke about them in London, oh, they're children.
So you believe then that we taught them all they knew?
Yes. And it's all due to the British.
Harold, it seems surprising, though, that the Nigerians, particularly the Nigerians, would need any help in rigging elections. I mean, these days we hear nothing.
Not true. That's not true.
Nothing but rigging of elections.
True. Look, we're the ones who rigged the elections. We're the ones who gave this example. If they ever needed lessons, we did every dirty trick in the book, and we did it in Nigeria. They didn't do it. We could say, oh, you can't trust them. The way they spoke about them in London, oh, they're children.
So you believe then that we taught them all they knew?
Yes. Yes, we've destroyed democracy in Africa.
It's deeply frustrating that although the testimonies of Smith and many Nigerians suggest that Britain's gift of democracy was not quite as history records, it's still impossible to be sure. Yet Professor David Anderson believes the government could easily end the mystery by finally agreeing to open the two long secret files.
Well, Mike,
give us a referendum. Britain, give us a referendum. Britain, just give us a damn freaking right to determine our own destinies and lives. Who are you? Who are you? Who are you to say what my life should be like? Huh? Look, Britain, I must die a free man. I must die seeing my children free. I'm saying it now. My children will be free.
David Anderson believes the government could easily end the mystery by finally agreeing to open the two long secret files.
Well, Mike, you and I will be long dead by the time that these documents become available. And frankly, I think it is farcical that the British government should be able to do this. For one thing, it undermines trust between our country and a former colony, Nigeria. And for another thing, it raises deep suspicions about British actions and intent.
Britain, enough of this bull crap. I just want two things. Free Mazi Nnamdi Kanu and organize a referendum for us. That's all. Two simple things. I'm not asking you to give me money. I'm not asking you to give me land or gold or political position. No. I'm not asking you for anything. All I'm asking for two things. Free Nnamdi Kanu and give the entire southern Nigeria and Middle Belt and the entire Christian part of Nigeria a referendum. Save lives. Remove your hand from genocide. Britain, if you don't stop now, this will not end well for everybody involved. Stop now. While Nnamdi Kanu is in illegal detention, which we all know you were the architect of, because both Nigeria and Kenya are your colonies, you cannot tell us your MI5 and MI6 agents were not aware of what was going on. Let's not even talk about what Kenya's president was aware of or whatever. No. Your agents know what's going on. You have people like Katrina Liang all over the place. You masterminded Nnamdi Kanu's arrest. You are trying to pin him in a position where you can now force his arm on negotiation. That's why you didn't kill him. Nnamdi Kanu, you know what he wants. We know what we want. Nnamdi Kanu knows what we want. You, Britain, knows what we want. That's all we're asking for. Stop the genocide, or else, by the time all this is done, the great from Britain, we will remove it. And British, will forever become synonymous with Fulani and all the banditry and evil that comes with it. We will loud it out to the whole world and into history that this is what Britain did with the Fulani as a criminal gang, a criminal partnership, ganging together to commit the greatest crime ever against humanity.
I really think these files ought to be released as soon as possible so we can find out.
Release these files. Stop keeping secrets of evil. Let Biafra go. Tell your friend, France, your partner, your business associate in colonialism or new colonialism, to let Ambazonia go. Let Oduduwa Republic go. You have no right over these peoples. Let the Middle Belt go. Who are you to, from 5,000 miles away, feel such entitlement that you should be dictating people's lives, destinies, and dreams, and even ambitions? Britain, let free the Caribbean islands. You have no right owning lands where you enslaved people, and you still own these lands, holding down their destinies. Jamaica, free Jamaica. Why does the Queen own Jamaica? What does she go there? How many times a year does she go there? What's she doing owning Jamaica? Britain, this nonsense needs to stop for the good of everyone involved.